Dear guests, dear audience, after this short break, I welcome you all back, or firstly now to our panel discussion, Roma, Resistance and Intersectionality, within the Other Europe Focus, Other Europe series, Perspective of Identity and Diversity. After the keynote of Angela Koche and Giovanni Pica, the following panel discussion will focus on the aspect of intersectionality and the lived experiences and art practices of Roma. As intersectionality describes the interference and simultaneity of discrimination based on different categories of domination, especially race, class, and gender, and an intersectional view may allow us to understand the experiences of Roma, the structural obstacles, and formulate solutions to systemic exclusion, discrimination, and social inequalities, as well as make visible the diversity of Roma, their cultures, lived experiences, and resistance movements in Europe. I'm very grateful to have such wonderful guests for this panel discussion tonight, which I want to introduce to you now. Tayo Awosusi-Onutor is a singer, author, director, political activist, and mother, and lives in Berlin. She describes herself as Afro-Sintezza. She interprets her music in English, German, and Romanes. She also lends her voice to film and TV as a dubbing singer and voiceover artist. Tayo studied German and multimedia. She is a board member of RomaniPhen e.V., the feminist Romnia archive, and a member of INI Romnia. She deals with the topics of education, history, and the civil rights movement. In 2017, she published the documentary Freimende, Wir über uns, Perspectives of Sinti and Roma in Germany, which you will be able to stream on our Kampnagel website and video channel within the next week from tomorrow on. You can watch the film dubbed in English and German, right? In 2021, Tayo's first children's book, Jokesi Club, Jek, Dui, Drin, Three Girlfriends in Berlin, will be published. In the book, three girlfriends, young Romnia and Sintesi, respectively, are the heroines of the story. Tayo is also politically active in various communities of color. Tayo, thank you for your work, for your wonderful voice, and welcome to Kampnagel. Mariya Atanasova is a Romani activist who has been actively engaged within the Romani community in Bulgaria. She has a medical background as a midwife and is currently pursuing a master's degree in political science at Central European University. For her efforts toward increasing the visibility of young Roma people and her contribution to intercultural understanding, Mariya was selected for Young European of the Year in 2020 by the Schwarzkopf Stiftung Young Europe. Mariya believes in fostering cooperation among different communities and is dedicated to working for Romani youth political participation. Her work is on engendering intercultural understanding and addressing social and political issues. Mariya, very welcome from Vienna. I'm really happy that you're here at Kampnagel, and thank you also for your important work. Laszlo Farkas is a Berlin-based Hungarian media producer, DJ, and human rights activist. He is the main organizer of the Roma LGBTQI floats at Budapest Pride. He is the founder of civilian Roma and queer community-related media projects called QRTV Europa, Radio Shun.es, and TV Backsale. Together with other Roma activists, they are running an online talk show called Ame Punch, The Five of Us, where they are discussing the issues and situations of Roma communities within an intersectional transfeminist approach. They pay particular attention to monitoring the media representation of Roma. Laszlo gained his experiences in communication, film, and media production at a Hungarian television channel and as a social media team leader of a media agency. As a DJ, he regularly plays at European Pride events in Budapest, Prague, and Amsterdam. Besides his sets of electronic music, he also plays Romani and world music. Laszlo, thank you for your heartfelt engagement in coming tonight and for your work, and welcome to Kampnagel. The discussion will be followed by a Q&A session, and I mean the discussion generally is moderated by Roxana Witt. Roxana researches about surveillance and radicalization processes in digital environments. She's a co-founder of Safe Space Association for Intersectionality, Inclusion, Digitalization and Youth Culture, and is co-founder of the platform RomaniPhen Online. Furthermore, she has worked as a consultant on human rights and digitalization for several international organizations. Roxana, thank you so much for agreeing to moderate on such short notice, and a very heartfelt welcome to you too. And now I wish you a wonderful and interesting evening, and thank you.
Dear Corinna, dear Kampnagel, thank you very much for that warm welcome. O saste lacho divis tumenge lachirati pralate penya, depending on where you are, which means welcome. Welcome to you, dear audience. Welcome to you, my friends. I'm very honored to be tonight with you, with so much and so many inspiring people. We have been hearing about intersectionality and about the theoretical meaning of what intersectionality means. I am very glad that we will introduce or talk with a short film produced by Laszlo, who is a multi-talent, actually, and who has dedicated his life really to giving intersectional and particularly Romani LGBTIQ perspectives a platform which are the most invisible and most vulnerable among the already marginalized. Laszlo, before we start with your movie, which is called We, Queer Roma, Valencia, I have a question for you, right? So you have made this movie where Romani LGBTIQ people represent themselves. What was the urgency behind that movie? Like, why did you make it?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. The urgency behind it was that I was fortunate to have a scholarship for almost 2 years between 2018 and 2020 to work on the self-representation of Roma LGBTQI people. And I got this scholarship basically with these media projects that was also mentioned by Corinna. And one of my content ideas was to create short films about queer Roma, and I mainly wanted to focus on Hungarian queer Roma people, but under the Hungarian circumstances, there are unfortunately less and less queer Roma people who are willing to open up about their stories and identities. So I had some kind of difficulties to organize the shootings. At the same time, in 2015, I got to know Demetrio Gomez, a Spanish queer Roma activist, on the first International Roma LGBTQI conference, which was organized in Prague by an LGBTIQ-led Roma organization, cultural organization called Art, and Lucy Framlova, academic researcher. And Demetrio kept inviting me to Spain. I used to live in Spain. I'm in love with Spain. And at one moment, the two things just clicked together that, okay, Demetrio keeps inviting me to Spain. At the same time, I'm struggling here to find the protagonist of my short film. And why don't I just create a short film with Demetrio while he is doing such an exemplary work, and he kept doing such an exemplary work in the last 20 years. And this is how it happened, and basically you will see it's a reportage, and Demetrio could also connect me with Rosa, the female protagonist of the film, who could open up about her Roma lesbian lived experiences, and the other urgency was that I saw quite a lot of representations of stories which set up the Roma communities as a mainly homophobic community, and I don't want to deny that, and I can also say that, of course, there is homophobia also within the Roma communities, but I wanted to put something next to these representations, which has a more positive output, because I also feel like with my own background that I was quite lucky with my own coming out within my family. I also had my own struggles, of course, but I wanted to show a story. I wanted to show stories like that as well, which are like empowering for the young queer Roma communities.
Self-representation does matter. I think this is has become very clear. Also, your work is basically like your life work is dedicated to giving those young people, those queer Romani realities a platform, right? And in preparation of our talk and panel tonight, I've read that you also made this movie because queer Romani realities are not only like under attack by homophobia, regardless from where it comes, but also it is kind of stereotypically portrayed if it is displayed at all. Is that right?
Yes, it can be like that. I don't want to generalize, and as I said, I'm also trying to put something different next to it, because I think that gives like the whole spectrum of the possible scenarios, and also I believe that if we want to empower the queer Roma youth who is growing up now, it's really important to show those stories as well, which has which have like a supportive and empowering output.
Thank you very much for that introduction, why the movie that we will now start and get a glimpse on was so necessary to make.
Yo no quiero elegir entre ser gay o ser roma. No tengo por qué elegir, ni voy a permitir que a nadie me obligue a elegir. Yo soy Demetrio Gómez, soy nacido en Tijuana, en México. Mi madre es mexicana, tengo orígenes romanís y trabajo sobre todo en lo que tiene que ver con interseccionalidad, decolonialismo y muy centrado sobre todo ahora en estos momentos sobre el tema de la sexual disidencia romaní. Como romaní, como inmigrante, como gay, como todas las partes de mi identidad, de una identidad múltiple que todos tenemos, en diferentes medidas, en diferentes situaciones, con diferentes factores, pero todos somos diversos, múltiples. A mí me hubiese gustado, cuando yo tenía 13, 14 años, 15, que despierta uno su sexualidad, poder tener modelos de referencia. No es lo mismo ser un roma que vive en un pueblo que ser un roma que vive en una ciudad. No es lo mismo que tu familia sea muy conservadora o que sea una familia que en muchos aspectos ha cambiado, ha aceptado ciertas diversidades, ¿no? Entonces va a depender mucho de las familias. Pero el tema LGTB sigue siendo de alguna forma un tabú. Y estamos avanzando mucho en las ciudades. Nuestra gente está tomando más seguridad en sí misma. Cuando de repente te encuentras con otros hermanos y hermanas que viven esas situaciones, que te puedes reconocer en sus vivencias, que ellos se pueden reconocer en las tuyas, eso es un proceso tan rico, tan bello y tan empoderador.
Yo siempre he sido juzgada tanto por payos como por gitanos. Por payos, pues por ser gitana y aparte LGTB, y por gitanos por ser lo mismo, LGTB y tal. Entonces, toda una vida hemos estado primero llenándonos a nosotros mismos de nosotros mismos para ser valientes, a salir al mundo, y luego otra vez haciéndote valiente para enfrentarte a lo que la gente te daba, ¿no? Todo el rato señalándote por una cosa o por otra. A mí me cuesta encontrar pareja en el mundo payo, porque somos educados muy diferentes.
Sí, bueno, yo creo que es algo que hemos vivido todos, ¿no? En un momento determinado. Es ser diferente entre los diferentes.
Cuando se lo dices a una mujer o a un hombre que son gays también, sienten pena por ti. Ah, gitana, pobre de ti. Perdona, ¿sabes? Perdona, a mí me encanta ser gitana, a mí me encanta ser lesbiana, no tengo ningún tipo de problema. Y ese es lo que la gente piensa. Ay, gitana, pobre. ¿Cómo pobre? O sea, a mí me encanta, es lo que me gusta. Lo que más me gusta ser en la vida es gitana, vamos. A mí se me ha respetado por ser un activista romaní con muchos años de experiencia, pero ser activista LGTB romaní realmente no lo era. Era un activista romaní y dentro de ser activista pues tocaba diferentes sensibilidades. No tenía la aceptación, sabía que era un tabú, nadie me iba a acompañar en ese proceso. Entonces fue un desafío muy grande el lanzarte y empezar a trabajar en esto. ¿Por qué un orgullo crítico?
Pues porque no nos gusta cómo se suele llevar el orgullo normalmente. Está haciendo una movida más económica, más capitalista.
El orgullo oficial, ¿no?, como lo llamamos, también tiene una ideología marcada, ¿no?, de defensa del estado de las cosas actual. Es un desfile ultracomercial al que acuden, incluso organizan empresas, partidos políticos, o sea, personas que mantienen, ¿no?, el sistema vigente, que a su vez perpetúa toda la homofobia, toda la transfobia, todo el racismo, todo el clasismo contra el cual nos oponemos.
¿Cuál ha sido vuestra reacción al saber que también había una población romaní que era disidente sexual y que de alguna manera quería participar dentro del orgullo?
Bueno, para mí fue una pasada, o sea, me súper encantó, pero a la vez es como, mierda, cuántas cosas desconozco yo personalmente, ¿no? O sea, cuántos mundos, cuántas realidades que no vemos, ¿no? Que no veo yo en mi caso, ¿no? Entonces como súper guay, que hostia a mí misma porque no tenía ni idea. O sea, lo siento, pero una pasada, a mí me emocionó mucho leerlo. Sí.
Siempre se ha dejado fuera la comunidad de personas racializadas, siempre se han dejado fuera las putas, siempre se han dejado fuera las pobres, siempre se han dejado fuera a las marginales y a todas aquellas personas que no encajaban con el sistema capitalista. Porque todas las opresiones van de la mano, todas las opresiones van juntas y esta es simplemente una más de la que nos atraviesa.
Volem recuperar la revolta. Ens apropiem de l'espai públic, l'ocupem i busquem retornar el Dia de l'Orgull a la seva data original, a 50 anys de la revolta de Stonewall i 40 de la primera mania a València. Stonewall fou una insurrecció de putes, traves, mariques, marimatges, racialitzades i pobres, que s'enfrontaren durant 3 dies a ratxolades i botellades al carrer amb la policia.
Tenemos muchas víctimas de la homofobia que son invisibles. que en las familias algunas personas han sufrido situaciones tan terribles que no han sido capaces de seguir adelante. Y son víctimas invisibles porque nadie va a decir que se suicidó porque era LGTB, porque sería una vergüenza para la familia.
Me parece muy importante que nosotros como comunidad romaní tengamos una conciencia de clase. Nosotros hemos sido perseguidos, humillados, hemos sufrido genocidios y no somos aceptados dentro de la sociedad mayoritaria. Somos disidentes sociales, somos disidentes sexuales y creo que tenemos que estar presentes en todo lo que sea una lucha anticapitalista, todo lo que sea una lucha feminista, todo lo que sea una lucha transfeminista y antipatriarcal. Creo que es algo básico para nosotros. Tenemos que tomar conciencia que somos pueblo también oprimido y tenemos que tomar conciencia de que hay más pueblos oprimidos, más grupos oprimidos y que todos al final tenemos una misma lucha. El que nos oprime es siempre el mismo. Me gustaría que el movimiento LGTB romaní, el movimiento de disidencia sexual romaní, fuera un movimiento crítico, que no cayera dentro de los movimientos mainstreaming, que no nos convirtiéramos en los animales exóticos que sirven para exhibirse dentro del movimiento oficial LGTB.
Yo me fui de mi barrio en el que me he criado. Hace 8 años o 10 que he vuelto, ya el pelo rapado, yo llevaba el pelo rojo y todos los gitanos por una alegría al verme. ¡Ay, la niña que ya está aquí en el barrio otra vez! Sin embargo, claro, está fuera, viviendo en Tarifa, viviendo en Barcelona, viviendo fuera. Y volví a Valencia, era como... El mundo gay era como, no sé, ¿sabes? Lo que parecía que se me había parado el tiempo, que no había movido y sin embargo el gitano lo veía más avanzado, no sé si me entendéis. Y no he sentido, desde esta última vez que he vuelto a Valencia, he sido totalmente 100% o sea, vamos, no puedo ir al curto, está claro. Pero 100% aceptada. Estoy orgullosa de haberme reconocido a mí misma y haberme... vamos, enfocado tal y como quiero ser hacia el mundo, que a mí me ha costado. Primero por estar un poco en contra de mí yo misma, ¿sabes? Entonces te luchas mucho y duele mucho. Y luego pues diría que de ser gitana y mujer.
Esas historias son necesarias. Las historias de personas que son capaces de superar los obstáculos y que son capaces de ser aceptadas en la comunidad. Porque es verdad que hay homofobia, es verdad que hay machismo, pero en el mismo nivel en el que existe en la sociedad mayoritaria. El pensar que un grupo humano, culturalmente o por lo que sea, está unido a una fobia determinada, eso es racismo. Los gitanos, las personas romaníes, vivimos en una sociedad patriarcal, pero igual que el resto. Entonces, todos tenemos que luchar contra el patriarcado, todos tenemos que luchar contra la misoginia, contra la desigualdad de género, todos, porque es una lección que todos debemos aprender. No es un valor étnico. Ser machista no es un valor étnico. Ser homófobo no es un valor étnico. Ni te hace más Roma. Lo que te hace es más mala persona.
This movie is so intense. You did a really great job. Thank you, and thanks to everybody who was part of that movie. It really was so touching. I feel I have to overthrow my whole catalog, and we really need a deep diving discussion, right? And a deep breath. Just on a side note, while we all take that deep breath, in that movie, Dear Gadget People, you saw Romani people from Spain declaring themselves to be gypsy. Just for your information, gypsy is a slur, so we can say it. We can say it to yourselves, right? Because to ourselves, because you can call yourself an asshole, but nobody else is entitled to call yourself an asshole, okay? So just to be clear, when you go out here, you may not call us that. We are Roma, Sinti, Kale, Manouche, whatever. Laszlo, we have seen, and you have be vocally about it right from the start, there's homophobia in Romani communities, but Demetrio said it very well, there's also homophobia and racism out there in Gaja communities. What is particularly challenging for us as Roma and Sinti communities is that we never have a space to talk about the issues inside of our community because we are always under the pressure of our white gaze that will use everything they can to stereotype us further and to apply more violence towards us, right? Same with racism inside of our own communities. So my question is, what do we need, or how do we claim spaces for ourselves where we can talk freely? This is a question to all of you.
It's a very difficult question, so so I think visibility is one of the key things. As a person who is working on the field of media and is engaged in a media project, I think that that's a key thing. I think currently we are a bit stuck in advocating for our equality, while I think it's really necessary to put the highlight more on advocating for our equity, because we really need we don't need to be treated as equal, but we also need to get those resources which make us powerful enough to be active and visible and powerful in the modern societies. So and then I could highlight many things. What would be necessary? Basically, like systematic changes. So,
talking about representation, Tayo, you're one of the board members of an association that is very much fighting for female and genderqueer representation, the feminist RomaniPhen archive, which is unique in Germany and also unique in its kind in Europe, I think, right? And you currently or recently have written a book which is called Yokesi Club, and it's also a book like the first of its kind where Romani children and very heterogeneous Romani children play the main characters and are portrayed in a positive way. Can you tell us a little bit more how you aim to claim back space with your book?
Yes, of course. Yeah, with the book, I actually had the idea of writing this book since like many years, and so it's also like a result of my journey, of my work journey, of my private journey. But at the same time, there are like different people who are part of my life also somehow represented in this book. But why the book? Why Yokesi Club, Jak du Trin, drei Freundinnen in Berlin? As a German book, actually because we need it. The children need it. Romnia and Sintezza children need books like these. All children of color need books like these. White children need books like these because they don't exist, or just a few exist that represent these kind of existences. The children are facing like books and also other media which they cannot really identify with. So they are constantly dealing with a picture that they can't identify with. So of course this is highly necessary for children when they grow up, that they can identify themselves, that they can see themselves represented somehow in some kind of way, and especially in a positive way, in a strong way, and not to be the side character that is somehow in an oppressed situation, but instead of that being like the main character that is also a heroine, like in Yukisi Club, for instance. So I felt that there's a need for a book like this, because I would have loved to have a book like this growing up, and the feedback that I get today, some years later after my childhood, is that children are also like really happily receiving this book. Children of our community, but also children of our other communities, also white children, they're really receiving it like in a thankful way. They are like really interested about the content, because the book is actually made in a way that it's actually about the story, about the adventure of these three girls who are friends, and they're the heroines of the story, and they're really cool and all that. But on the side, like there are always notes on the side, and through these side notes, the children receive additional information about Roma and Sinti, which they don't have, and that's a fact. And not only children, also in the majority society of adults, the information is lacking. There's a really big gap of that information of Roma and Sinti, of the history, also of German history. I was working for many years with children, with youth people throughout Germany, and dealing with them, giving them information about the history, about how to deal with the subject, how to adapt an anti-racist, reflective perspective. And during all this work, over all the years, this was also part of what led me to write the book. There were like 30, 35 young people, 19, 20 years old, just finished school, and we always ask them, what have you learned about Roma and Sinti? What do you know about Romani history? What do you know about the connection of German and Romani history? And they know nothing about it, and it's not their fault. The fact that they know nothing about it is that it's not being taught. So all they know is, yes, they were also victims during the Second World War. They were also victims of the Nazi area, and that's it. And that's the maximum. So we can obviously see that there's like a big gap that needs to be filled, but not only with that part of the history, which is also totally important, but besides that, we also have many other stories. We have many stories in our different Romani cultures that need to be told, that need to be visible. There are many women, Sintezza, Romnia, who did like many very rich and important contributions, and those stories need to be told. Those stories need to be heard. They have to be visible, because we all need them, and it's really important to make that visible. So this was all a summary that leads up to be like the motivation for me to write out a book like this, because I think also and strongly believe that education is a big part in this whole subject that we're talking about, and it's also really important to start with education, to use education to try to change something for the better, and also to use the younger generation to try to change something into the better.
Mariya, how did you learn about Romani history and identity? Did you have a book like that of Tayo?
Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be here, and thank you very much for this question. Actually, while she was talking, it was so familiar to me because as a young person growing up in a Romani community in Bulgaria, I never actually had an access to any kind of history or culture related to Romani people. So as a young person growing up, that actually leads to a lot of confusion. It is not only dealing with all the issues in the society, growing up like having a different identity, although at some point I didn't make the difference. I actually did not realize that I'm different somehow, but all the other people, they did. So that made me think about my own history, my own culture, if I have any, actually. And I learned about my history, my culture, and about my community later. I think after around my teenage years. But how? Because I started to volunteer and work with Romani organizations, so that was the reason. Basically, I never, I was not taught anything about Romani history or culture at school, which is very, very crucial. I was not the only Romani kid in the school, but I was never taught about my own history.
Well, that's a phase that many of us have to face, right? It's still, even in Germany, land of the National Socialist era, we are still not in the books. But I heard about some book about queer Roma, Laszlo, right? There's a book about queer Roma coming out.
It's already released, and this book is written by the Czech researcher who I already mentioned, Lucia Fremlova. You can also you can also see the cover of this book on these slides and the photo of Lucia, and also you can scan the QR code and download the book as a free ebook. And I just started to read it today as well. But going back to the topic of children's book, you probably heard about the recent happenings and the progresses in Hungary around anti-LGBTQI laws, and basically the core part of this process or progress was also around a children's book. Like last year, there was a book released for children called "The Wonderland is for Everyone," and it was released by the biggest lesbian organization in Hungary, and it also contains stories of Roma characters, like, for instance, it contains the Roma remake of Snow White. And this book was very powerfully attacked by the Hungarian neo-Nazi party. They basically grinded. Like their first move against the book was that they grinded this book publicly because of the LGBTQ characters. And that was one of the things that led to this recent anti-LGBTQI law in Hungary, and there were some other laws as well. This recent one, which was enacted in July, that got the biggest international visibility. But there were already transphobic law last year. There was a law in December which made it impossible for LGBTQI people to adopt. Basically, it's not possible in Hungary to adopt if you are an LGBTQI person in a relationship, but there were some legal ways, and the current Hungarian government made it totally impossible for single people to adopt, just because they didn't want LGBTQI people to be able to adopt. So this is the power of children's book, and I was very happy to see that you also have one. And very shortly, coming back to the previous question, I was talking very much from my activistic perspective, but when I said that we need to fight for equity, I also want to say that basically the the systems that we are living in, and the people who are in power in those systems, they need to understand more that, they also need to understand more that yes, we do need our equality, but we need restoration with all of our histories as Roma and as LGBTQI. We need refunds, and we need the structures and the power and the tools to be able to fulfill those expectations. What is on Roma, what is on LGBT, and what is on basically on Roma LGBTQI people as well in the modern societies.
The demand of payback is something that is already very popular, particularly in the Black civil rights movement, right? I feel sometimes the Black civil rights and activist movement is like 2 steps ahead of Romani movements and everybody else. Like, I have learned so much in the past year. Laszlo, you have been in that context talking about understanding, and while we are talking about representation and understanding, what comes to my mind is that where I got my first inspiration from when I was a younger woman was from songs and from singers. Tayo, you are a singer and you are making Romani and Black music because both are part of your identity. You have made this wonderful song called Taisa. And there you sing Taisa Hava Memer, which means tomorrow we will understand each other, which is very beautiful. You should all go listen to her songs and also her upcoming album. But what I really want to ask you now, while we are talking about reparations, what do we need for Gade people to understand us better tomorrow?
Yeah, I think first of all we need hope, and this is why I'm still dealing with this whole subject since, I don't know, many years now. You know, there's a saying that you don't really know where you're going. You have to know where you come from, so you know where you're going. And I think when we talk about all these subjects that we're talking about tonight, which are very different subjects, but they're still clinging together in some kind of way. I think it's really important because, you know, like lately, like the last maybe few years, we could see that when we talk about LGBTIQ movement, when we talk about the Black movement, somehow it seems like it all started with Black Lives Matter, which is a totally different time that has been there and still is there, but that is not the beginning of Black civil rights movement or Black resistance. That's way much further back. But I think we have to really see where are we all coming from, and I don't mean that stupid question that we get asked. I mean actually, what are we dealing with? And why are we dealing with the things that we are dealing with today? It's not a coincidence. And it all has roots, and there's a certain continuity if we look at all these different stories that we hear and that we can see in like persons today here on this panel. There are different stories, and these stories have histories, and we have to understand those histories. And we as a society, we as a global community have to understand those histories so that we can know actually where are we heading to. It's not about putting up a rainbow flag or saying, yeah, Black Lives Matter, or putting like a black square on your social media account. That's not where we're going to. Is okay, you can do that, that's nice. I'm not saying you can't do that, but I'm saying that's not the solution. We really have to see where we're coming from. How did all this shit came up today, to say it in a very unacademic way, that we're dealing with today, and how can we all, which part can we all chip in somehow to make a change. And not everybody's gonna chip in the same part. You know, it's like when you're going to a restaurant and everybody's like, and the bill comes, and then you have like this moment like, oh, I'm gonna pay, or whatever, or somebody wants to pay everything. Maybe sometimes one person has to pay everything. And maybe other times you can split. And the next time, maybe 2 or 3 people are paying. It depends on the situation. It depends on the whole setting. That's what I'm trying to say. So we have to see what are we dealing with? Who's dealing with what? Not everybody can deal with the same things at the same time. And I just found a quote by Toni Morrison, who I really love, author Toni Morrison. And she said in an interview one time, if you're only tall because somebody else is on their knees, then you have a serious problem. And I think that's also another picture that I can put in there. And yeah, I think we are all part of this. We're all here together. And we all have to chip in at some point of time, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, depending on the situation.
I really love how you have such eloquent way and such diplomatic way to say, gotcha, have to pay us back. Okay, this is not what you said, I'm saying this. Gotcha, no, you have to pay us. Okay, back to you, Mariya. You heard what Tayo said, everybody has a position, and you were talking about the potential of Romani youth before you were awarded by Schwarzkopf Foundation for being Young European of the Year in 2020, how Romani youth has such a huge potential. So when you're thinking about the future, what is the role of the Romani youth in Europe?
Such a big question. Thank you. I mean, first of all, we all know the cliche that kids and youths are the future, obviously, but they're not only the future, because the future is created now, in my opinion. And if you want to see some changes, if you want to see anything in the future that is change relating to the community and all the issues that we face, we all have to bring up this potential. I'm saying that Romani youths and kids do have potential, but we should kind of bring that into the light, and how this is happening is through education. And I'm not saying all the prejudices and stereotypes about Romani kids, that they just don't want to go to school, or Romani people they just don't want to educate their kids. I'm talking about educational opportunities.
May I interrupt you on this? Just for one sentence, I don't think that it's, we should not be talking about Romani parents that don't want to educate their children. I think it's the Gaja parents that don't want to educate their children. Yeah, that was my point, was that we all know the prejudices about the Romani people. So sorry, you just interrupted me, and now. Sorry. No, it's okay. About the educational opportunities, I do believe that we can change our own communities. We can change also the society. We can talk about these important issues, but all this can happen only through the educational opportunities and actually seeing the world. Because there are so many Romani kids and youths, not only in Bulgaria and Europe in general, they grow up deprived, basically, of such a basic knowledge and right, because there is a difference, as one of the persons in the video, actually in the movie, said, there is a difference when you grow up. Is it a village? Is it the city? Is it the bigger community? So obviously, Romani kids, they grew up, most of them, in a settlement where they are really deprived of culture, deprived of educational opportunities. So that's one of the things that we should bring up. Laszlo, when we are talking about LGBTIQ children in general, there is little LGBTIQ culture and history that is kept record of, right? This is an issue for LGBTIQ youngsters all around the world, right? Like for Romani children, there is even less education for them, and even the least education for LGBTIQ Romani children and their history. What do you think do queer Romani children need to be empowered and to have a vision for the future?
Of course. I think, so if I think about the inspirations of my media projects, for instance, also my stories from my childhood come to my mind, like my story of realizing of my own LGBTQI or gay being. I remember it happened like I was like 14, and I was in the first grade of the high school, on the second grade of the high school, and I've been living in the dormitory of the high school during the weekdays, first together with 11 other guys, and then with 5 other guys. And one day, one of my roommates was missing his suite from his cabinet. He didn't find it, and it's a very unique. Okay, actually, I realized that it's not so unique, but in Hungary we believe that it's very unique. It's this suite filled with cottage cheese, and it's covered with chocolate. It's called Turo Rudi, or like cottage cheese stick. And so he didn't find this, and as I've been the only visible Roma person in the room, he started to accuse me that, yes, you probably stole it, and that's why I don't find it. And I told him that it wasn't me, and I don't know where is his Turo Rudi. But then he kept being more and more aggressive, and at one point he pushed me to the wall. Actually, he lifted me up on the wall, and he was very strong. He was actually the strongest guy in the whole grade. He was doing kayaking like competitively, and I was like a quiet, weak-bodied child with asthma and stuff, so I was quite scared, and the whole room was watching what is happening. And then he told me that, yes, I'm sure you stole my Turo Rudi because, yes, you are Roma, and actually you are faggot too, because the reason why you keep wanting to hang out with one of our ex-roommates is because you fell in love with him because you are a faggot. And I felt very humiliated, and the whole situation was very humiliating and scary. But I started to think, and yes, at one point I realized that basically he's right. I probably fell in love with that ex-roommate. And then I started to think of my own sexuality or gay identity. So, and I believe, and at the same time, I didn't really have any information or any guidance where could I get any information about it. Basically, what I knew and what I saw, that there is a very massive homophobia in the society, and also like a quite massive racism as well. So in this case, the highlight was on homophobia, and yes. So where could I find information about it? And after a while, with the help of the internet, I found those sources, of course, but it was quite a big struggle. So
what would you have needed?
Well, basically, like some support to understand my own gay identity, to know that I'm not a sick person, as many things around me told me that I'm sick because I'm gay. So and it happened like 15, 16 years ago. I'm getting older, I know, but it's further and further in time, but still, like, and especially in the last 10 years, the things in Hungary are progressing in a way that makes me guess that the current queer and queer Roma youth in Hungary can be in the can have the same struggles. So yes, we of course we need stories even as children's books for Roma and also for LGBTQI, and yes, education. I totally believe in that. I think it's very important what Mariya said, because a lot of it can be very essential to have access to information and to be educated on certain topics like being LGBTQI or Roma.
Tayo, you're in your organization. You are creating those spaces that Laszlo is talking about for young Roma and Sinti women and children. Tell me more about how you created a platform for sisterhood and empowerment.
Yeah, at our organization RomaniPhen, which is located in Berlin, by the way, we call ourselves the Feminist Roma Archive. And if we talk about like younger people in giving spaces, at RomaniPhen we also have since several years a girls group that we are forming a space for, and that group is called Romani Chai, which is translated means Romani girl. And yes, those are girls. Right now the current group is age group is between, I think, 8 and 15, so they are younger girls. So we want to give them a space to first of all just to have the space, because for all of those girls, even though they are living in a big city, in the capital of Germany, this space is still something really important for them. Not only is it important, it's also necessary, and it gives them like the opportunity and the location and the situation to have an exchange with each others, and to learn at the same time, because all this many times takes place at our rooms, the rooms of RomaniPhen. So they are automatically surrounded by all the knowledge that we actually document and put together since years. And this is not only our knowledge, this is knowledge of our community that we actually try to put together, and through this archive, which is actually a knowledge archive, there are of course different books and media and everything, but at the same time it's also bringing together the knowledge of the community by producing educational material, for instance, making it accessible for schools, for out-of-school programs, for different people who are working in these fields, maybe educational, social fields and whatnot. So all these access and all these tools are there, and those girls are surrounded by these tools and they grow up with these tools. The result is, for instance, that one of the girls who was like one of the first girls to join the group like several years ago, who also made an internship at our organization, is now, she finished school, Abitur, and now she's part of the team. And this process of like many years was really a beautiful thing to observe and to watch, because from like being a very young school kid, then being an intern at this organization, then producing material, and she, by the way, produced a short movie, which you can also find on our YouTube channel, Roma Power, on YouTube. There are many different movies, documentaries, and content there, and there's also the this short movie that she produced about the persecution history of Roma, and this, which was part of her internship. She was, I think, 15 or 16 and did this together with one of her classmates who was also part of it. But this short movie, for instance, is several years old now and is still used until today in schools, in out-of-school programs, because it fills the gap that I was talking about earlier of just giving out the knowledge, giving out the history. So if we see that something like this happens during the development of a young person, I think that's what we can mark as a success in some kind of ways. But yes, we need more of these spaces for younger people of our community, but not also for younger people, also for people in general. We really need these spaces because we need them to grow, we need them to exchange, we need them to produce more knowledge, and to also, maybe at the end, if we want, decide to also make that knowledge public.
What I really love about your archive is that the girls are not only surrounded by knowledge, but by people they can identify with and who are really, really great personalities. People out there, if you don't know the RomaniPhen archive, you should definitely look out for them and for the great people working with you, because there's a lot of professors and doctors and researchers and just like the elite, the absolute elite of
that fits. This is just these are just our pictures.
They are there, like from Professor Dr. Elizabeth Tayonos, Dr. Jane Weiss, Isidora Randjelovic, Heidi Bartz, a lot of inspiring, and of course Tayo Awosusi-Onutor out there where girls can look up to. Somebody that girls, Roma and Sinti girls all over Europe will also look up to is sitting right next to me, Mariya. Like, you started off as a medical professional and now you decided to go for political science, so I hope to see you in Brussels soon. Until then, I would like to ask what made your heart change from being a medical professional to political science?
First of all, when I started to think about my future career and education, it was very simple. I wanted to help to people somehow, but I did not understand to whom and how exactly. I enrolled at medical university as a midwife. I graduated midwifery, but during the whole period of my studies in the medical university, there were a lot of things happening. One of them was that I already was engaged with some non-governmental organizations, and I started to work as a volunteer, after that as a mentor in a couple of Romani and non-Romani organizations as well, with different groups, not only with Romani kids and youths, but as well with in one social enterprise in Bulgaria, working with kids deprived of parental care. So I became sensitive towards different groups in the society. But during my actually clinical training at the hospitals, I do have also a bit of work experience as a midwife. I've seen a lot of things that made me disturbed and annoyed. I couldn't understand why and how this is happening. And it was all toward the Romani women, actually, in the maternity yards, in the maternity units. And that whole journey made me think about the anti-Gypsyism that Romani women face in hospitals. And I realized that actually the issues are way beyond that. And this is only one very, very small part of it. And I realized that I can be useful in another way as well. I got interested in human rights, identity politics, and this is how and what actually naturally led me to my education now.
I really find that very inspiring, and I find it very important that people with your background, with your medical background, are going into politics. For those of you who don't know, until 2002, there were actually forced sterilizations happening on Romani women in Germany. You thought it ended in 1945, it ended in 2002, and not even yet has it ended in Europe, right? Have you ever encountered a Romani woman who fell victim to such a crime?
that's a very serious thing to talk about. I have not encountered, like, formally a woman being a victim of very serious. I mean, all of the issues are very serious, but like forced sterilization, for example, and it's very difficult to be reported. But I was able to see how is the attitude toward Romani women and non-Romani women, how they are placed, what medical attention do they get, which is also conflicting and clashing here with the medical ethics and being a professional. And this is not a very rare case, so it's basically a non-formal policy toward Romani people. Also, the segregation toward Romani people. There are units and floors for the Romani people, actually. But if you ask a medical professionalist, they would never actually talk about it and say that this is happening. No. And that was also one of the main things that made me think about, like, how can you segregate people like this? And even, like, there were obviously conversations, and this is so normalized that people do not realize in the system that this is an issue, and it's a discrimination, and it's a human right violation. You cannot segregate and do not want people to be mixed, which is, yeah.
Healthcare and the limited access to healthcare is a serious issue, not only for Romani women, but also for genderqueer people in particular. Most of the genderqueer people and people in the LGBTIQ communities, particularly multiple marginalized communities, are suffering really massive amounts of violence that, of course, take a toll on their mental health. We have seen in the movie where Demetrio talks about suicide rates, and suicide rates are also something that are not counted in when we are talking about that in Eastern Europe, Romani communities have a life expectancy that is almost, on average, 10 years below that of the average society. Laszlo, when we're talking about LGBTIQ communities in Romani societies and mental health, what do you think, what is needed to improve the mental health and the resilience and empower the communities?
Basically what we already discussed, information about being LGBTQI, because, so for instance, in Hungary there has been a massive misrepresentation of from LGBTQI people in afternoon talk shows, for instance, in the middle of the 2000s or from the middle of the 2000s, and basically even myself, the main images what I got about Roma LGBTQI people were based on these misrepresentations, which were basically directed by white producers who wanted to, whose main focus was on doing a scandalous talk show. So yes, information, mental support, for instance, even at schools, but also for grown-up people, it would be very nice in a way if because I see that, like, in general, I see in the queer communities that it can be challenging, for instance, to be a single grown-up queer person, especially under this pandemic, or in this pandemic. I saw a lot of queer people struggling with mental health and with loneliness, for instance. So, and also what we discussed, we would need more spaces. We would need spaces for our queer Roma communities as well. libraries, for instance, museums. It would be so nice. And I also wanted to add something shortly to forced sterilization, because there were still news about this from 1-2 years ago. That is still, it was it was suspected that it's still happening in Hungary. In Miskolc, it's a city with a higher Roma population in the northern part of Hungary. So, yeah. And and within the European Union, this is happening. I would like to highlight that this can still happen within the European Union. I already wanted to highlight this while we were talking about the anti-LGBTQ laws of Hungary, but I would also highlight this at this point.
I do agree that it's a very thin ice walking on that topic. Although there were a couple of years ago, for example, in Bulgaria, there were like the right-wing political party came up with a couple of suggestions for policies, and one of them was reducing kind of the children that Romani people have. And there was a policy regarding that, so it could be switched to very easily to forced sterilization, though. Historically, there are still countries that didn't really recognize the forced sterilization, and we all know that actually it did happen toward Romani women.
Forced sterilization is just one example of many examples of violence that Romani groups of all kinds endure on a daily basis, and that we have to resist, right? To be here and to be alive is a form of our resistance, and it's a proof that people try to erase us so many times, and yet we survived. In the end, Gadget didn't make it. They didn't succeed. However, what I really would like to ask you, one last question before we open up for attendees to ask questions to this great panelist around here, is, and it's towards all of you. If you were living in a world where we would not have to endure all of that violence, and where we would not have to fight every day, and where we would not have to be activists to survive, what would you have become? Who would you have been? What were your dreams?
Wow. To answer this question, it also needs a kind of self-reflection. Now it's happening very publicly, but yes. So when I was starting to think about the ideas of these media projects, QRTV, TV Baktale, and Radio Šunes, there were a lot of things that influenced these ideas. But QRTV, for instance, was coming from me, from DJing. Basically, I wanted a platform where I could video DJ. And I wanted to do it in a TV show, and I sent this idea to a TV channel that I was already working with. I was their social media manager, but they simply ignored my letter. And then I thought, okay, then I will just think of a TV channel, what I will do. At the same time, I became more and more involved in activism, and the idea was also shaped by my activistic things. And at the end, it happened like basically it's an artistic and activistic platform. And DJing is the thing what I'm doing the least. And video DJing. So I think I would do more DJing and more video DJing. But also, what I really like in our Roma communities, if I can say it, that I saw our communities and my family. I remember them to be such cheerful and happy and loving and generous people, and some of them with so much creativity, and that was my other goal as well. I felt like there are so many things what we could do together with these people, and that's why I also felt that I want to work on these platforms, because it would be just so nice if there would be one institute if we could do those things. And at the end of the day, I would be still happy if I could only work on these media project ideas and media platforms, and just to give the media space in this case, because it would be so much fun.
Queer plus Roma plus Happy is one of the platforms you also created.
It's one of the slogans. It was a slogan of the Roma LGBTQI floats that we were organizing in Budapest Pride.
This is so great. So, what about you, ladies? What would you be?
Well, to answer that question, in this utopia that you are drawing, I would probably still be a singer, but in this utopia, I would probably would have to not be confronted with certain ideas in which musical style I'm supposed to be and in which not, I guess. So it would be more open. And probably also would have more access to support, to fundings, to access to different musical areas, I guess. I would probably still be an author because I love language and I love to write and I love books and for children, and I also love books for so-called adults, so I would probably still do that as well, but I guess with another focus. So probably with another focus and still maybe an educational, but not trying to filling a gap so much and being maybe more productive in another kind of way, I don't know. I would probably still be a mother, very probably so, but I would, in this utopia, probably would not have to give my daughter additional information that she does not get in school. I would not have to double check the historical information that she receives at school. I would not have to buy books and show her how to be a critical reader. I would not have to censor books, explain which words we use and why not and all that. So I would probably have an easier job being a mom, I guess. And yeah, I think the other things that I do, like producing films and being part of RomaniPhen and working there, I'm pretty sure I would still do it, but probably with less effort and with another focus and more resources, I guess, and access.
So, Gadget, take notes of all of the things that are said here because you're expected to induce that change. Last but not least, tell me, Mariya.
Maybe I would have stayed in the medical field in that case. Who knows? Or maybe I would have gone again to the social sciences, but instead of studying identity politics and social injustices, I would have studied like political parties and elections. Who knows? I mean,
if it wasn't for the violence that exists against Romani people and intersectional people, I would be right now in a laboratory working on Algiers, because I was up to become a biotechnologist before I somehow got sucked in by politics. However, I'm very glad things worked out that way, otherwise I would not be sitting here tonight with such great personalities and people so inspiring. Thank you at this point already for inspiring talk. And right now I think we have 5 more minutes left or so. 10, right, okay. So dear audience, you heard that inspiring people tonight. What questions are left from your side? Or remarks, or whatever. Now is your chance. Raise your hands. Wow, so many questions. I am overwhelmed.
I have to hold it because of...
Yeah, because of Corona. Yeah, should I take it off? Okay. Yeah, I was thinking, because you said there are not enough kind of role models or people that you're sharing the histories and the conversations, and then I was thinking about Aziz. I don't know if you know him. It's a Bulgarian figure. We call him sometimes the Bulgarian Madonna. But is Aziz a kind of this person, or is Aziz this figure that is very much already exoticized for the Gadget perspective? Like, what do you think about?
You know that song. So who wants to answer about Aziz?
I think probably yes. He's even exotizing. Is it the word? Exotizing himself in a way, but I think he's doing it in a way that he's transforming it, or he's using it for his own success, and I personally find him quite empowering. Yes, at the same time, I don't really believe in this role model thing anymore. More like, of course, I'm very happy about the success of everyone, and I'm happy to see if somebody is succeeding well. And me personally, I've been also presented several times as a role model of my community, but at the same time, it awakens mixed feelings inside of me, because, okay, like I still, so as a queer Roma person, the reason why I can be here today, for instance, is also because I'm privileged compared to many other members of my own community, and I think we also need to see that our own privileges, and why would those? Why should those feel bad who didn't have that luck or those privileges what I have, for instance? So I'm trying to highlight more and more the systematic issues behind our struggles, because I think if we would work on that, and if we would highlight those and not only, if I say we need to work on that, it's not only about Roma and not only about LGBT and Roma LGBTQ, but also about the mainstream societies. So we really need to work on the systematic changes, because yes, it's great that some of us are succeeding, but it would be so much greater if all of us could succeed so much better.
And if there was like a broader representation, like nobody would have to worry about, fulfilling stereotypes, right? Because there would be such a variety that you would see the heterogeneity. I just want to tell a little side story on Aziz. I was I was supporting a migrant self-organizing group, also in Bremen, which is close to Hamburg, where we are tonight. And, there were 2 young Romani people and bi people who are non-gender binary, and they were very detached from their Romani identity. So one is from Brazil, and the other one is from, I think, also from Eastern Europe. And, they were like not really wanting to come out to me as Romani when I first met them, because they were shy. Like they didn't know so much about their Romani identity or culture or history. So, me being very openly like, I'm a Sintezza, whatever, somebody asked me, like, here I am. They were like, okay, may I even identify as Roma or Sinti, because I don't know stuff about that. And then they showed me one night the song of Aziz, which I saw very well sung, because all Romani people are good musicians, obviously not. And they were singing that song, right? Because they were queer and they were proud and they were loving Aziz. They were loving him. And when we were listening to that song, I was, that guy is also Roma. They were like, yeah, we know, and we are also Roma. They came out to me as Roma through Aziz, and they also felt empowered due to his music and also due to him being queer and Roma, just like themselves. And I feel so, just like you said, Laszlo, it is very true, Like, we are very privileged right here. We are so politicized, and we all have, like, uncovered white supremacy in our heads and deconstructed it. But there's some people who simply need some representation, somebody to look up to, right? So if they find representation in somebody that is exoticizing themselves, so who are we to judge? Who are we to judge? We are not the people living in mahalas. We are not the people being forced sterilized. People, last chance for questions to this amazing people here. Not last chance, this is a joke. You can always contact the people right here. You can invite them, you can create platforms for them, and you should. If you're watching us tonight right here in Northern Hamburg, or right there in a live stream, and you're all like, wow, I need to hear more, this was not enough, you can create these rooms, and we need more of these rooms. So, any last statements here from our panelists?
Well, what I would like to add at this point, while you are thinking about the questions, that actually I've been contacted from Hamburg while I got in touch. So 2 years ago, I got in touch with people from Hamburg. They came to the Roma Film Festival in Berlin. And Acadica, yes, organized by Roma Trial, and they saw this short film, and I'm working on the upcoming ones, and we had a talk about it. The people who've been contacting me, they are from Queer Scope, a queer organization here in Hamburg. And they actually provided me some support to work on the upcoming short films. So
there's more to come?
Yes, and I'm working on 2 other, which is about Hungarian stories, a story of Roma lesbian mother who is growing a child, and the other is about a Hungarian Roma drag queen who is imitating the Hungarian Roma queen of the Hungarian queen of Roma music, Margit Bango Margit, and the third one is going to be about Gypsy Gospel, who you could also see in on the slides. Umtata, a Polish queer Roma person living in Berlin, who is doing this drag character Gypsy Gospel.
This is so great, Hamburg. You did already well, and you can do even better. We all can. Girls, what about you? Any last statements for audience?
I just hope that we're gonna continue this discussion, formally, informally, and not only here in this place. And I'll be here if anybody wants to talk and ask me something, or just to chit chat.
I think we touched based on many subjects tonight, and many subjects looking at the time that we had, and I hope, because I know of like the knowledge gap that is there, and the visibility that is missing. I just hope that each and every person that is here tonight will somehow take a little bit from what you heard tonight, from what you saw, from the input, from the knowledge, from the existences that we heard of and saw, and could maybe also learn a little bit, to take it with you in your life. Because I think there are always these small everyday situations that we're all dealing with in our lives. And sometimes we think like, yeah, what should I do? I mean, I'm just like, a regular person doing my thing or whatever. I'm not Angela Merkel or whoever. What should I do? I don't have, a lot of power. But I think we all have a lot of power, because nobody's living on an island. We're all surrounded by at least a few people. And like sharing news, spreading news, and making things visible and heard can really change something, as maybe corny as it sounds, but it really does. And I mean, some people maybe even have the opportunity to organize an event, or have some kind of educational institution they're working with, or whatever. Great, but not everybody does. But everybody has a circle, and I think taking knowledge and taking like new knowledge and higher quality knowledge that can actually overlay the bad knowledge and renew it in some kind of way. This is something that everybody can take in their circle and make some kind of change. So I hope that this is something that maybe will happen a little bit after this night.
Sorry, but Tayo, if you would be in the position of Angela Merkel, I think you would be doing so much better work. Yeah. So, at least from the point of Hungarian Roma and the LGBTQ.
Thank you so much for being here tonight. You, all of us. And if you are like, what did I hear here? I didn't know anything, I didn't understand anything. That is very good. Stay curious. Follow all of us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Follow up with all the work that the precious people here and the organizations behind them do, and the many, many more activists that could not be here tonight, but should be here one day, and on all the other panels as well. Thanks to Kampnagel, and thank you for having us here, for making this possible. And people, stay tuned out there for their other events on Other Europe.